The streetlights began turning north at 3:17 a.m. on a Tuesday, every single one in Millbrook bending like iron flowers toward some invisible magnetic pull. By dawn, the entire town would realize that Sarah Chun had been missing for exactly 6 months to the minute. But that morning, Detective Marcus Webb stands in his kitchen, unaware that the impossible is happening outside his window. The coffee maker gurgles its familiar tune as he scrolls through his phone, pausing on a text from his partner, Chun case files requested by family attorney. They're not giving up. Marcus sets the phone down harder than necessary. 6 months of dead ends, false leads, and a search that consumed half the department's budget. Sarah Chun, 32, veterinary technician, devoted dog walker, had simply vanished from Riverside Park on a crisp October evening. No body, no witnesses, no trace except her German Shepherd, Atlas, found 3 hours later sitting perfectly still by the park's north entrance, his leash wrapped twice around a lamppost. The doorbell chimes. Marcus glances at the clock, 6:45 a.m. Through the frosted glass he makes out a familiar silhouette. Elena? He opens the door to find Sarah's younger sister clutching a manila envelope, her dark hair disheveled, eyes rimmed red. "What are you doing here so early?" "Something's wrong with the lights," Elena says, her voice barely above a whisper. "All of them. They're pointing the wrong way." Marcus steps onto his porch, following her gaze down Maple Street. Every streetlight, dozens of them stretching toward downtown, has somehow rotated to face north. The metal poles remain vertical, but the lamp heads have turned like mechanical sunflowers, their illumination casting strange shadows across lawns and sidewalks. "Jesus," Marcus breathes. "When did this happen?" "I don't know. I couldn't sleep, so I went for a drive around 3 a.m. That's when I noticed them." Elena's hands shake as she opens the envelope. "But that's not why I'm here. I found something in Sarah's apartment." She pulls out a worn leather journal, its cover cracked with age. "The landlord finally let me collect her things yesterday." This was hidden behind her dresser, taped to the wall. Marcus takes the journal, noting the weight of it, the way the pages seem swollen with secrets. The first entry is dated 3 years ago, written in Sarah's precise handwriting. October 15th. "The compass is acting strange again. Always pointing north. Even when I turn it. Dr. Hendricks says it's just magnetic interference from the phone towers, but I don't think that's right." "There are dozens of entries," Elena says, stepping closer. She was tracking something. Animal behaviors, weather patterns, even people's dreams. And Marcus ... her voice catches. She predicted her own disappearance. Marcus flips through pages of meticulous observations. November 2nd. "Mrs. Patterson's cat brought home a bird today. Still alive but completely motionless. Pupils dilated. Breathing shallow, like it was waiting for something." December 8th. "Third sleepwalking report this week. All heading north toward the park. All stopping at the same oak tree." "Look at the last entry," Elena whispers. Marcus turns to the final page, dated exactly 6 months and 1 day ago, April 18th. It's getting stronger. "I can feel it pulling at me now, the same way it pulls at the animals. Atlas whines whenever we approach the north end of the park. Tomorrow I'm going to walk that path one more time. If something happens to me, check the streetlights. They'll turn when it's ready." A chill runs down Marcus's spine as he reads the final line. The town is like a giant compass, and we're all just iron filings waiting to be arranged. "Elena, why didn't you bring this to us 6 months ago?" "We cleaned out her apartment the week after she disappeared. The journal wasn't there then." Elena's eyes fill with tears. "I swear to you, Marcus, we went through everything." Marcus closes the journal, his mind racing. 6 months of treating this as a standard missing person case, when Sarah had been documenting something far stranger. He looks up at the streetlights again, their uniform northern orientation, creating an almost military precision to the suburban landscape. "I need to call this in," he says, but Elena grabs his arm. "There's more." She reaches into the envelope and pulls out a photograph. This was tucked inside the journal's back cover. The image shows Riverside Park at sunset, but something is wrong with the perspective. The trees appear to be leaning slightly, their branches reaching toward the right side of the frame. In the foreground, barely visible in the gathering dusk, stands a figure by the oak tree Elena mentioned, the same tree where multiple sleepwalkers had been found. Marcus squints at the photo. The figure is too distant to identify clearly, but there's something familiar about the posture, the way the person seems to be reaching upward. When was this taken? The back is dated 3 days before Sarah disappeared. Elena's voice drops to a whisper. "But Marcus, look at the trees." He examines the photo more closely. Every tree in the frame, oaks, maples, even the young saplings planted along the walking path, appears to be bent northward, as if shaped by years of persistent wind. But Marcus has walked through Riverside Park hundreds of times. The trees grow straight and tall, exactly as they should. "This doesn't make sense," he mutters, but even as he says it, a memory surfaces. A call they'd received 2 weeks after Sarah's disappearance. Mrs. Patterson, the elderly woman who lived adjacent to the park, insisting that the trees were moving wrong and that her compass had started spinning. They'd written it off as grief-induced confusion from a worried neighbor. Elena steps closer, her voice urgent. "I've been driving around town all morning. It's not just the streetlights, Marcus. The weather vanes, the satellite dishes, even the swing sets in the elementary school playground, everything's pointing north." Marcus feels a familiar tightness in his chest, the same sensation he'd experienced during his first week as a detective when he'd realized how much he didn't know about the darkness people could hide. But this is different. This suggests something beyond human capability. "I'm calling Detective Rivera," he says, already reaching for his phone. "We need to wait." Elena grabs his wrist again, her grip surprisingly strong. "There's something else. Something I didn't tell you 6 months ago because I thought it was just stress." She takes a shaky breath. "The night before Sarah disappeared, I had a dream. I was standing in Riverside Park and everything was pulling me north. The ground, the air, even my own heartbeat. And at the center of it all was this sound like metal being bent, but also like..." She struggles for the words. "Like the earth itself was groaning." Marcus stares at her, pieces of an impossible puzzle beginning to form in his mind. The journal entries, the photograph, the streetlights, and now Elena's dream. All pointing to the same conclusion. Sarah Chun hadn't simply vanished. She'd been taken by something that was still here, still active, and still hungry. His phone buzzes with an incoming call. The display shows Detective Rivera's number, but when Marcus answers, her voice is tight with barely controlled panic. "Marcus, you need to get to Riverside Park, now." "What's the situation?" Marcus asks, already moving toward his car with Elena close behind. "We've got a problem," Rivera's voice crackles through the phone speaker. "Remember the Chun case evidence we stored in the basement? The items from her apartment, the park samples, Atlas's collar?" Marcus fumbles with his keys, adrenaline sharpening his focus. "What about them?" "They're gone. All of it." "But that's not the weird part." Rivera pauses, and Marcus can hear commotion in the background, multiple voices, the squawk of police. Radios. The storage room door was locked from the inside. No signs of forced entry. And Marcus? The evidence boxes are sitting in the middle of Riverside Park, arranged in a perfect circle around that oak tree. Elena gasps beside him, her face going pale. Marcus starts the engine, his mind reeling. How is that possible? I don't know. But it gets worse. We've got 3 more missing person reports from overnight. All dog walkers. All from the north side of town. The phone line goes quiet except for the sound of wind rustling through what Marcus assumes are the park's trees. When Rivera speaks again, her voice is barely audible. "Marcus, the dogs came back on their own. All 3 of them. They're sitting by that same oak tree, and they won't move. Won't eat, won't respond to their names. They're just waiting." Marcus takes the corner onto Park Avenue faster than he should, Elena gripping the door handle. "We'll be there in 5 minutes. Bring the journal," Rivera says. "Whatever Sarah was tracking, I think it's escalating." The line goes dead. Marcus glances at Elena, who's clutching Sarah's journal like a lifeline. "Are you sure you want to see this?" "She was my sister," Elena says firmly, though her voice wavers. "If there's any chance she's still out there, As they approach Riverside Park, Marcus notices other cars converging on the area, and not just police vehicles, but civilian cars with drivers who seem drawn by the same inexplicable pull. A woman in a nightgown stands on the sidewalk, staring at the park entrance with glassy eyes. An elderly man sits on a bench, facing north, his hands folded in his lap as if waiting for instruction. "Marcus," Elena whispers, "look at the people." He follows her gaze. At least a dozen residents have gathered around the park's perimeter, all facing the same direction. Their expressions are vacant, peaceful almost, like sleepwalkers who've reached their destination but haven't yet awakened. Marcus parks behind Rivera's squad car and approaches the park entrance. Detective Carmen Rivera stands just inside the gate, her usually immaculate appearance disheveled. Her dark hair has escaped its ponytail, and there are coffee stains on her jacket, uncharacteristic. Signs of stress from someone who typically maintains military precision. "Thank God you're here," she says, immediately noticing Elena. "Miss Chun, I'm sorry about the circumstances, but we might need your help understanding your sister's research." Elena nods, opening the journal. She was tracking behavioral changes. Animals, people, even inanimate objects. She thought something was building up to ... Rivera leads them down the main path toward the park center. The evidence boxes appeared sometime between midnight and 3 a.m. Groundskeeper found them when he came in for his morning rounds. But here's what's really disturbing: security cameras show nothing. 6 hours of footage, and the boxes just materialize in frame 347 at 3:17 a.m. 3:17, Marcus repeats, remembering Elena's words about the streetlights. That's when the lights turned. They round a bend in the path, and Marcus stops short. Ahead of them, arranged in a perfect circle around the massive oak tree at the park's heart, sit 12 evidence boxes from the Chun investigation. Each box is positioned exactly 3 feet from the tree trunk, creating a precise geometric pattern that seems to pulse with invisible energy. But it's not the boxes that make Marcus's breath catch. It's the dogs. 4 German shepherds, including Atlas, Sarah's dog, sit motionless between the boxes, their backs straight, heads raised, all facing the oak tree. Their eyes are open but unfocused, and their breathing is so shallow Marcus initially thinks they might be dead. How long have they been like this? Elena asks, her voice barely a whisper. Since we found them, Rivera replies. Animal control tried to move Atlas an hour ago. The moment they touched him, he started convulsing. They had to back off. Marcus approaches the tree cautiously, noting how the morning light seems to bend around it, creating shadows that don't align with the sun's position. The oak itself appears unchanged, massive trunk, sprawling branches heavy with late spring foliage, yet something about it feels fundamentally wrong, as if it's occupying slightly more space than it should. Sarah's journal mentions this tree specifically, Elena says, reading from an entry dated 2 months before the disappearance. She calls it the anchor point. She thought it was somehow connected to the magnetic anomaly she'd been tracking. Rivera pulls out her phone and shows Marcus a series of photographs taken throughout the morning. We've been documenting everything. Look at this. The images show the evidence boxes from different angles, but in each successive photo, the boxes appear to have shifted slightly, not moved. Exactly, but rotated incrementally around the tree. The movement is subtle, maybe an inch or two per hour, but unmistakable. They're orbiting, Marcus realizes, like planets around a sun. That's not all, Rivera says, swiping to the next photo. Watch the shadows. In the most recent image, the shadows cast by the evidence boxes all point directly toward the tree, regardless of the sun's actual position. It's as if the oak itself has become a source of gravity, bending light and matter to its will. Elena suddenly grabs Marcus's arm. Listen. He strains his ears, filtering out the distant traffic and morning bird songs. Underneath it all, barely perceptible, is a low humming sound, not mechanical, but organic, like the earth itself breathing. The frequency seems to resonate in his chest, making his heartbeat synchronize with its rhythm. It's getting stronger, Elena says, consulting the journal. Sarah wrote about this sound. She thought it was some kind of signal. Rivera checks her watch. We've got more units coming, but I wanted to get your take before the scene gets contaminated. Do you think Sarah discovered something here? Something that might have... She gestures helplessly at the impossible arrangement before them. Marcus studies the oak tree, noting how its bark appears to shimmer slightly in the shifting light. There are patterns in the wood grain he hadn't noticed before, swirling designs that seem to draw the eye inward, creating an optical illusion of depth. Elena, does the journal mention any specific dates? Astronomical events, maybe, or cycles? Sarah was tracking? Elena flips through pages quickly. She was obsessed with the lunar calendar, and ... She stops, her face draining of color. Marcus, tomorrow is the spring equinox. Sarah marked it with a red circle and wrote convergence point underneath. Convergence of what? She doesn't say, but look at this entry from last year. Elena reads aloud, equinox test confirms the pattern. Every 6 months, the phenomenon peaks. Animals gather, people sleepwalk. And the tree ... responds. Next cycle will be stronger. I need to be ready. Rivera's radio crackles to life. Detective Rivera, we've got a situation at the north edge of the park. You need to see this. Copy that, Rivera responds, then turns to Marcus and Elena. Stay close. Something tells me this is just the beginning. As they head toward the reported disturbance, Marcus glances back at the evidence boxes. In the few minutes they've been standing there, the boxes have definitely moved, not dramatically, but with the inexorable patience of celestial mechanics. The dogs remain frozen in their vigil, and the humming grows fractionally louder. Whatever Sarah Chun had discovered in this park, it was still here, still growing stronger. And if her journal was correct, they had less than 24 hours before it reached its full power. The north edge of Riverside Park terminates at Millbrook Creek, a lazy waterway that normally flows east toward the river valley. But as Marcus Rivera and Elena approach the embankment, they can see that something fundamental has changed. The creek is flowing backward. Officer Janet Kowalski stands at the water's edge, her usually steady demeanor cracked with bewilderment. It started about 20 minutes ago, she reports as they join her. No change in elevation, no blockage downstream. The water just turned around. Marcus kneels by the creek bank, watching leaves and debris drift upstream with unnatural purpose. The water itself appears normal, clear, cold, moving at its typical lazy pace, but in completely the wrong direction. There's more, Kowalski continues, pointing across the creek to the residential neighborhood beyond. Mrs. Patterson called in a disturbance. Said her basement compass is spinning like a carnival ride, and her cat hasn't moved from the north-facing window in 3 hours. Elena opens Sarah's journal, scanning entries with growing urgency. She documented this too. 6 months ago, 3 days before she disappeared, creek reversal confirmed. The pull is strong enough now to affect flowing water. Magnetic field must be massive. Rivera pulls out her phone and dials a number. I'm calling in a favor from the university's geology department. We need someone who understands magnetic fields and, wait. Marcus interrupts, his attention caught by movement across the creek. A small group of people has gathered in the Patterson backyard, standing motionless in the early morning light. Even from a distance, their poses look familiar. Are they all facing the same direction? Kowalski nods grimly, north, toward the tree. We've got similar reports from all over town, people just stopping what they're doing and turning north. They're not responsive, but they're not catatonic either. It's like they're waiting for something. Elena's hands shake as she turns journal pages. Sarah called them the attuned, people who were sensitive to whatever force was building here. She thought they might be the first to. Her voice catches. Marcus, what if Sarah didn't disappear? What if she became one of them? Before Marcus can respond, his phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. Check the missing persons files from 1973. Same tree. Same pattern. Dr. H. Dr. H. Elena breathes, reading over his shoulder. Sarah mentions that name in her journal. Dr. Hendricks, he was helping her research. Rivera frowns. Harold Hendricks? The professor who retired from the University 5 years ago? I thought he moved to Arizona. Apparently not, Marcus says, already dialing the number. After 3 rings, a gravelly voice answers. Detective Webb, I presume. Elena showed you the journal. Dr. Hendricks, where are you? Close enough to help, far enough to stay safe. You need to understand this isn't the first time. Sarah wasn't the first to disappear from that park. Marcus puts the phone on speaker as Rivera pulls up the 1973 case files on her tablet. I'm looking at the records now. 3 missing persons, all within a week of each other. Last seen near Riverside Park. The tree was younger then, Dr. Hendricks continues, his voice heavy with years of accumulated knowledge. Smaller, the effect was more localized. But every 50 years, during the spring equinox, it reaches a peak. The missing people from 73 were just the beginning of that cycle. Elena grips the journal tighter. Beginning of what cycle? Think of it as a harvest, Dr. Hendricks says, and Marcus feels ice form in his stomach. The tree, or whatever lives within it, draws energy from living beings. It starts small, with animals and sensitive individuals like your sister, but as it grows stronger, the radius expands. Rivera checks her watch. The equinox is tomorrow, at 11:47 p.m. Are you saying this thing is going to try to take the entire town? I'm saying it's going to succeed unless you find a way to break the pattern. And Detective Webb? You need to get away from that creek. The water reversal means the field is intensifying. Anyone within a mile of the tree is at risk of becoming attuned. As if summoned by his words, Marcus feels a strange tugging sensation, like a gentle hand pulling at his chest. The humming he'd noticed earlier grows louder, and he realizes he's unconsciously taken a step toward the park. Marcus, Elena says urgently, grabbing his arm. Your eyes, they're starting to unfocus. Rivera immediately moves between Marcus and the park, her hand on her weapon, though she's not sure what she'd shoot. We need to get you out of here, now. Marcus shakes his head, fighting against the increasingly strong urge to walk north. Not yet. Dr. Hendricks, how do we stop this? The 1973 disappearances ended when lightning struck the tree during a storm. The electromagnetic pulse disrupted whatever process was taking place. But that was random chance we can't count on. Weather. What about artificial disruption? Rivera asks, already thinking tactically. If we could generate enough electromagnetic interference. Theoretically possible, but you'd need massive power. More than the town's electrical grid could provide. Dr. Hendricks pauses. There might be another way, but it would require going back into Sarah's research. She was close to understanding the tree's true nature. Elena flips through the journal's latter entries. She was studying root systems. Something about how the tree connects to underground water sources and mineral deposits. She thought the entire park might be sitting on top of some kind of natural electromagnetic generator. Marcus forces himself to focus despite the growing pull northward. If that's true, maybe we can disrupt it from underground. Redirect the water flow, or... A loud crack echoes across the park, followed by a sound like enormous branches breaking. They turn to see that one of the streetlights visible through the tree line has bent even further north, its metal pole now, forming a 45-degree angle. It's accelerating, Dr. Hendricks says grimly through the phone. You have maybe 12 hours before the field reaches critical mass. After that, anyone within 5 miles won't be able to resist the pull. Rivera grabs Marcus's other arm as he takes another unconscious step toward the park. We need to evacuate the area. You can't evacuate an entire town without causing panic, Dr. Hendricks replies. And the moment people try to leave, they'll feel the pull even stronger. The field creates its own barrier. Those who are already attuned can't willingly move away from it. Elena's face goes pale as she reads from the journal. Sarah wrote about this. She called it the cage of intention. The closer you get to the tree, the harder it becomes to imagine leaving. Marcus tests the theory by visualizing himself driving away from Millbrook, getting on the highway, putting distance between himself and the park. The mere thought creates a wave of anxiety, so intense he has to grip Rivera's shoulder for support. Jesus, he whispers, I can't even think about leaving. Because you're becoming attuned, Dr. Hendricks explains. The field is rewriting your neural pathways, making the tree's location feel like home, like safety. Sarah's journal should have a map of the underground water sources. If you can find a way to disrupt the natural electromagnetic currents feeding the tree, we could starve it, Rivera finishes. Cut off its power source. Elena turns to a page covered with Sarah's detailed sketches cross sections of the park, showing underground streams, mineral deposits, and what appears to be a complex network of natural caves. She mapped everything. But Marcus, look at this. She points to a notation at the bottom of the page. The source isn't the tree. The tree is just the antenna. The real power comes from something much older, much deeper. If I don't come back, someone needs to go underground and find the true heart of this thing. Underground, Marcus repeats, fighting another wave of compulsion. To walk north. She's telling us we need to go underground. Dr. Hendricks's voice crackles through the phone one final time before the line goes dead. Detective Webb, whatever you do, don't let them take you. Sarah is still alive down there. But she's not Sarah anymore. None of them are. The phone goes silent, leaving Marcus, Rivera, and Elena staring at each other as the morning sun climbs higher and the pull toward Riverside Park grows stronger with each passing minute. Somewhere in the distance, a dog begins to howl, a long, mournful sound that echoes from the direction of the oak tree, as if Atlas has finally found his voice after 6 months of waiting. The Millbrook Public Library's basement archives smell of old paper and forgotten time, but they're far enough from the park that Marcus can think clearly. Elena sits across from him at a metal table covered with geological surveys, historical documents, and Sarah's journal, while Rivera coordinates the evacuation of nearby residents from the first floor. The town records go back to 1847, Elena says, spreading out a hand-drawn map from the original settlement. Look at this. The first buildings were all constructed in a specific pattern around what they called the Sacred Grove. Marcus studies the faded ink marks. The original town layout forms a rough spiral, with structures positioned at precise intervals, radiating outward from what is now Riverside Park. Sacred to who? The Ojibwe tribe that lived here before European settlement. Elena pulls out a leather-bound journal that predates Sarah's by over a century. This belonged to Father Michael Garrett, the first missionary. Listen to this entry from September 1848. The natives speak of a great listening tree that draws the spirits of the dead. They warn us not to build near it, but the land is fertile and the water sweet. God will protect us from their heathen superstitions. Rivera descends the basement stairs, her face grim. Evacuation's not going well. Half the people we're trying to move won't leave their houses. They keep saying they need to stay close to hear the calling. How many are affected? Marcus asks, though he's already dreading the answer. Every household within a mile of the park has at least one family member showing signs of attunement. Vacant stares, compulsive northward orientation, complete disinterest in leaving the area. Rivera sits heavily in a chair. And it's spreading. The radius has expanded 3 blocks since this morning. Elena turns pages in Father Garrett's journal, her finger tracing entries that grow increasingly frantic. September 15th. Young Thomas McCarthy has been walking in his sleep, always toward the grove. Found him this morning standing beneath the great oak, speaking in a language I do not recognize. September 22nd. 3 more children affected. They gather at the tree each dawn, humming in harmony. The sound makes my bones ache. There, Marcus says, pointing to an entry dated September 30th. What does that say? Elena reads aloud. It spoke to me last night, not in words, but in knowing. The tree is not evil, it is lonely. It has been calling across the void for so long that it has forgotten how to stop. The children it takes are not dead, but transformed, made into vessels for its endless song. I must find a way to answer its call and make it whole, or it will devour every soul in this valley. Rivera leans forward. What happened to Father Garrett? He disappeared October 1st, 1848, Elena says, consulting a town record. Same night as a massive electrical storm that split the oak tree down the middle. The surviving settlers sealed off the damaged section with iron bands and built the first church on the opposite side of town. Marcus feels pieces clicking together. Iron disrupts magnetic fields. They were trying to contain it, but iron degrades over time, Rivera adds. If those bands have corroded or been removed. Elena riffs through Sarah's journal, finding the page she's looking for. Sarah documented the tree's condition 6 months before she disappeared. She wrote, iron containment bands show severe rust damage. Eastern band completely separated from trunk. Western band hanging by single bolt. Tree appears to be regenerating. Around damaged areas, a low rumble shakes the library building, rattling the overhead light fixtures. Through the small basement windows, Marcus can see streetlights flickering as their continued northern rotation strains electrical connections. We're running out of time, he says, studying the geological surveys. These underground water maps show a natural cave system running beneath the entire downtown area. If Sarah was right about the tree being just an antenna. The real source is in the caves, Rivera finishes. But how do we access them without going through the park? Elena traces her finger along the survey lines. There's an entrance marked here, behind the old Methodist church on Elm Street. The survey notes say it connects to the main cave network. But it was sealed in 1923 after a group of children got lost. Lost or taken? Marcus asks grimly. Before Elena can answer, Rivera's radio crackles to life. Detective Rivera, we have a situation at Memorial Hospital. Multiple patients reporting the same recurring dream walking through underground tunnels toward a bright light. They're all asking to be discharged so they can go home to the tree. Rivera keys her mic. How many patients? 17 so far, including 2 who were admitted for broken legs. They're trying to walk despite their injuries. Marcus stands, feeling the familiar tug northward even from this distance. The attunement is getting stronger. We need to get underground now, before we lose the ability to resist. Elena gathers the historical documents and Sarah's journal. There's something else. Father Garrett's final entry mentions the deep singers, people who had Been taken by the tree in previous cycles but hadn't died. He thought they were still alive somewhere beneath the ground, adding their voices to the tree's call. Sarah could be one of them, Rivera realizes, along with the missing people from 1973 and who knows how many others. They climbed the basement stairs to find the library's main floor in chaos. Mrs. Chun, the elderly librarian, stands at the north-facing windows with 3 patrons, all of them pressing their palms against the glass and humming the same low, resonant tune Marcus has been hearing all morning. "Mrs. Chun?" Elena approaches her carefully. "Are you all right?" The librarian turns, her eyes unfocused but peaceful. "Elena, dear, you should come listen. It's so beautiful. Your sister is singing with them now." Elena steps back, her face going pale. "We need to go, now." They exit through the library's rear entrance, avoiding the main street where more people have gathered, all facing north with that same serene expression. The Methodist church is only 2 blocks away, but Marcus can feel his resistance weakening with each step closer to the park. "Talk to me," Rivera says, noticing his struggle. "Keep your mind active." The pattern, Marcus forces himself to focus. Every detail points to the same conclusion. The tree isn't acting alone, it's part of something larger. A network that extends underground throughout the town. They reach the church to find its rear yard overgrown with weeds, but the old stone foundation is still visible. According to the survey map, the cave entrance should be directly behind the building's eastern wall. Elena kneels beside a depression in the ground, brushing away decades of accumulated leaves and debris. Here, there's metal underneath. Together, they uncover a heavy iron grate set into a concrete frame. The metal shows the same rust patterns Marcus has seen on the tree's containment bands, but it's still intact enough to require tools to remove. Rivera retrieves a crowbar from her patrol car, while Marcus and Elena continue clearing the entrance. Beneath the grate, stone steps descend into darkness, and from the depths comes a sound that makes Marcus's blood freeze. Singing, dozens of voices harmonizing in a melody that seems to resonate in his bones, calling him home to a place he's never been. "That's Sarah's voice," Elena whispers, tears streaming down her face. "I can hear her in there." Rivera returns with the crowbar and begins working on the grate's rusted hinges. "Whatever we find down there, we stick together. No one goes off alone, no matter what you see or hear." As the first hinge breaks free, the singing grows louder, and Marcus realizes they're about to descend into the true heart of whatever has been feeding on Millbrook for over a century. The second hinge snaps, and the grate falls away, revealing the stone steps that lead down into the earth. The singing pauses for a moment, as if dozens of voices are drawing breath in unison. Then, from the depths, comes a single word carried on the voice Marcus recognizes as Sarah Chun. "Welcome." The stone steps descend at a steep angle, worn smooth by decades of underground water flow. Marcus leads the way with a flashlight, Rivera close behind with her weapon drawn, and Elena clutching Sarah's journal like a talisman against the darkness. 20 steps down, the narrow stairwell opens into a natural limestone cavern. Their flashlight beams reveal a space far larger than the basement entrance suggested. Cathedral-high ceilings disappear into shadow above, while the floor stretches away in multiple directions like the hub of a vast underground wheel. But it's not the cavern's size that stops them in their tracks. It's the people. They stand in perfect formation throughout the space, dozens of men, women, and children of various ages, all facing the same direction. Their clothes span different eras. A woman in a 1940s house dress, a man in 1970s bell-bottoms, children in more recent clothing. All of them are humming that same resonant melody, their voices blending into a harmony that seems to make the cavern walls themselves vibrate. "Jesus Christ," Rivera breathes, her flashlight beam sweeping across face after face of the missing. Elena steps forward, scanning the crowd. "Sarah? Sarah, are you here?" The humming stops. In the sudden silence, the sound of dripping water seems unnaturally loud. Then, from somewhere in the depths of the crowd, a familiar voice responds. "Elena? You shouldn't have come." A figure emerges from among the singers, a young woman with Sarah's face and build, but changed. Her skin has a pale, luminescent quality that seems to glow softly in the flashlight beams. Her eyes, once brown, now shine with an inner light that makes Marcus think of deep ocean creatures. "Sarah!" Elena starts forward, but Marcus catches her arm. "Wait," he warns, studying Sarah's transformed appearance. "Something's not right." Sarah moves with fluid grace, her bare feet making no sound on the stone floor. She wears the same clothes she'd disappeared in 6 months ago, but they appear somehow cleaner than they should be, as if preserved by the cave's strange atmosphere. "I'm still me," Sarah says, reading the fear in their expressions. "But I'm also more now." "We all are." She gestures to the silent crowd behind her. "The tree doesn't take us, Elena. It completes us." Rivera keeps her weapon trained on Sarah, though she's not sure what good it would do. "Sarah, we need you to come with us. There are people in town who are being affected by whatever's happening here. They're losing their free will." Sarah's luminous eyes reflect genuine sorrow. They're not losing anything. They're being offered a choice: remain isolated and afraid, or join something beautiful and eternal. "This isn't beautiful," Elena says, her voice breaking. "This is wrong. People are disappearing. Families are being destroyed." "Like our family was destroyed when I went missing?" Sarah asks gently. "Elena, I've been dead to you for 6 months anyway. Now I have the chance to be part of something that will never end, never hurt, never leave you alone in the dark." Marcus studies the cavern's layout, noting multiple tunnels branching off in various directions. All of them seem to slope upward, presumably leading to different parts of town. "Sarah, what's down there?" He points his flashlight toward the deepest part of the cavern, where the stone floor disappears into what looks like a natural amphitheater. "The heart," Sarah says simply. "Would you like to see it?" Before anyone can object, she begins walking toward the amphitheater, and Marcus finds himself following despite every instinct screaming at him to run. The compulsion is stronger here underground, not the gentle pull he'd felt in town, but an irresistible current drawing him forward. Rivera and Elena have no choice but to follow as they descend deeper into the earth. The walls around them begin to change, showing signs of artificial modification. Carved symbols spiral downward in endless patterns, and Marcus realizes they're following the same geometric designs he'd seen in the oak tree's bark. "Sarah, how long have you been down here?" Elena asks, struggling to keep up. "Time works differently in the deep places," Sarah replies. "Sometimes it feels like days, sometimes like years, sometimes like I just arrived." She pauses, turning back with that ethereal smile. "But I remember you visiting my grave. I could hear you crying from down here. That's when I knew you needed to understand." The amphitheater opens before them, a natural bowl carved from living rock, descending in concentric circles toward a central depression. And in that depression, pulsing with its own internal light, grows something that defies easy description. It might have started as tree roots, but it has become something far more complex. Organic tendrils twist upward and outward, forming intricate patterns that hurt to look at directly. The growth pulses with bioluminescent patterns, and from it emanates the same humming they've heard above ground, but amplified 100-fold. "My God," Rivera whispers. "How far down does it go?" "All the way to the world's heart," Sarah says. "It's been growing for millennia, following underground water sources, mineral veins, magnetic field lines. The tree in the park is just one of its reaching fingers." Marcus forces himself to look away from the hypnotic patterns. "Sarah, this thing is taking people against their will. Children, families, Children who will never grow old or sick or sad, Sarah interrupts. Families who will never be separated by death or distance. Marcus, you felt the pull yourself. Part of you wants this. She's right, and that's what terrifies him most. Standing here in the presence of this ancient thing, Marcus can feel his resistance crumbling. The idea of joining this eternal harmony is becoming more appealing with each passing moment. Elena opens Sarah's journal, her hands shaking. You wrote about finding a way to stop this. You said someone needed to disrupt the source. Sarah's expression grows sad. I thought that once too, but Elena, look around you. Look at their faces. For the first time, Marcus really studies the expressions of the deep singers. They don't look like prisoners or victims. They look peaceful, content, united in a way that he's never seen in the world above. The loneliness ends here, Sarah continues. Every person who's ever felt isolated, misunderstood, or afraid, they find family here. They find purpose. By becoming something inhuman, Rivera says, but her voice lacks conviction. By becoming more than human. Sarah approaches her sister, extending a glowing hand. Elena, you've been alone since I disappeared. You don't sleep well. You don't eat enough. You cry when you think no one can hear. Down here, that pain ends forever. Elena stares at her sister's transformed face, tears streaming. But you're not really Sarah anymore, are you? You're something wearing her face. The question hangs in the cavern air, and for a moment, uncertainty flickers across Sarah's luminous features. In that instant of doubt, Marcus sees their chance. Sarah, he says urgently, if you're still in there, if any part of the woman who wrote that journal remains, help us. Show us how to give people a real choice instead of this compulsion. Sarah's glow dims slightly. And when she speaks, her voice sounds more human than it has since they arrived. The iron, she whispers. Father Garrett was right about the iron, but not just containment purification. If you could get pure iron to the heart, it might. She struggles, as if fighting against something inside her mind. It might break the connection long enough for people to choose freely. The moment passes and Sarah's ethereal composure returns. But you won't do that, will you, Marcus? Because now you understand. This isn't an invasion, it's an invitation. She's right. Standing in the presence of this ancient thing, feeling the promise of eternal connection and purpose, Marcus finds his resolve wavering. The idea of returning to the lonely, painful world above seems increasingly absurd. But then Rivera grabs his arm, her grip painful enough to cut through the mental fog. Marcus, we need to go, now, before we can't. As they turn to leave, Sarah calls after them, her voice echoing through the cavern with inhuman resonance. You'll be back, all three of you. When the equinox reaches its peak tonight, the choice will be made for the entire town. Everyone will finally come home. The climb back to the surface feels like swimming up from the bottom of a deep lake, each step away from the heart requiring tremendous effort. By the time they emerge from the Methodist church basement, all three of them are gasping as if they'd been holding their breath. Iron, Marcus pants, leaning against the church wall. Sarah said iron could purify the connection, break the compulsion. Rivera checks her watch, 2:47 p.m. We've got less than 9 hours until the equinox peaks. How much iron are we talking about, and how do we get it down there? Elena flips through Sarah's journal with trembling hands. She references Father Garrett's notes about iron disrupting the tree's influence. But look at this, she calculated. The mass needed based on the root system size. Her face goes pale. Marcus, she estimated it would take over 2 tons of pure iron to affect something that large. 2 tons, Rivera repeats. Where the hell do we get 2 tons of iron on short? Notice? Marcus's phone buzzes with another text from Dr. Hendricks. Check the old railroad yard. 1923 train derailment, left boxcar loads of iron ingots in underground storage. Town never cleaned it up. GPS coordinates attached. Dr. Hendricks again, Marcus says, showing them the message. There's iron in the old railroad yard. They drive through increasingly empty streets toward the abandoned rail complex on Millbrook's eastern edge. The few people they pass all stand motionless on their front lawns, facing north with that now familiar vacant expression. Even children's bicycles have been abandoned mid-ride, their owners drawn away by the strengthening call. The railroad yard is a graveyard of rusted track and collapsed buildings, but the GPS coordinates lead them to a concrete bunker built into a hillside. The heavy metal door stands slightly ajar, as if someone has recently been inside. Dr. Hendricks? Marcus calls out as they approach. In here, comes the gravelly response. They find the elderly professor standing beside stacks of iron ingots, each one roughly the size of a brick. His thick white hair is disheveled, and his clothes suggest he's been working here for hours. Harold Hendricks, he says, extending a dirt-stained hand to Rivera. Sorry for the cloak and dagger approach, but I needed to stay mobile. The closer I get to that tree, the harder it becomes to think clearly. Elena examines one of the ingots. These look pure enough. How much is here? About 3 tons total. The 1923 derailment was carrying raw materials for a steel mill downstate. When the train went off the tracks near the park, several cars broke open and spilled their cargo into what was then a construction site. Rather than excavate, the town just built over it. Dr. Hendricks wipes sweat from his forehead. I've been researching this phenomenon for 30 years, ever since I lost my graduate assistant to the tree in 1973. Rivera starts calculating logistics. Even if we can transport this much iron underground, how do we get it close enough to the heart to disrupt the field? We don't, Dr. Hendricks says. We bring the heart to us. He leads them to a hand-drawn diagram spread across a makeshift table. The cave system follows the town's original creek bed. Before the park was developed, Millbrook Creek flowed directly over the heart chamber. If we can redirect the current creek back to its original path, the water would carry the iron directly to the source, Marcus finishes. But how do we redirect an entire creek? Dr. Hendricks points to another section of his map. There's a beaver dam about half a mile upstream from the park. It's been holding the creek in its current channel for decades. If we destroy the dam and clear the old stream, physics will do the rest. Elena studies the diagram. The old stream runs right through the cavern where we found the deep singers. They'd be caught in the flow. Along with Sarah, Marcus realizes grimly. Dr. Hendricks meets his eyes with painful honesty. Detective, those people aren't coming back unchanged. The transformation Sarah showed you, it's irreversible. The best we can do is give the rest of the town a chance to choose freely. Before anyone can respond, the bunker's concrete walls begin to vibrate with a low, subsonic rumble. Outside, they can hear metal groaning as more streetlights twist further northward. It's accelerating, Dr. Hendricks says, checking his pocket watch. We have maybe 6 hours before the field reaches critical mass. Rivera takes charge. We need a plan that doesn't require us getting close to the park. The iron goes in the creek upstream. We blow the beaver dam, and we pray the water carries enough metal downstream to disrupt whatever's down there. I know someone with explosives. Marcus says. Tommy Reeves, he does demolition work for the county. But he lives on Maple Street, only 3 blocks from the park. Then we get him out of there before he becomes fully attuned, Rivera decides. Elena, you stay here with Dr. Hendricks and start loading iron into the truck. Marcus and I will retrieve Tommy and assess the dam. As they prepare to leave, Elena grabs Marcus's arm. When this is over, when the water flows through that cavern, Sarah won't survive, will she? Marcus looks at her with the compassion of someone who's delivered too much bad news in his career. Elena, the Sarah we knew, died 6 months ago. What we saw down there was something else wearing her face. But part of her was still in there. I could see it when she told us about the iron. Then maybe that part will finally be at peace, Marcus says gently. They leave Elena and Dr. Hendricks with the iron and drive toward Maple Street. The town has taken on an apocalyptic quality. Abandoned cars sit in the middle of intersections, where their drivers simply stopped and walked away, following the call northward. Emergency sirens wail in the distance, but Marcus suspects the first responders have been affected too. Tommy Reeves' house is a craftsman bungalow with a well-maintained garden, but the front door stands open and his pickup truck sits in the driveway with the driver's door ajar. They find Tommy standing in his backyard, staring north toward the park with a crowbar in his hands. "Tommy," Marcus calls. "We need your help." Tommy turns slowly, his eyes struggling to focus. "Marcus, I was just ... I need to go somewhere. There's something calling me." "I know," Marcus says, approaching carefully. "But first, we need you to help us with some demolition work. You like blowing things up, right?" A spark of the old Tommy flickers behind the vacant expression. "Blowing things up? A beaver dam. Big one, upstream from the park." Tommy blinks, and for a moment he seems almost normal. "Yeah, ... Yeah, I got C4 in the shed. For the county road project." He shakes his head as if clearing fog. "But Marcus, there's this sound. This beautiful sound calling me home." "I hear it too," Marcus admits. "But Tommy, people are depending on us. Can you fight it long enough to help us?" Tommy grips the crowbar tighter, using the pain to focus. "How long do I have to fight it?" Rivera checks her watch. 5 hours, maybe less." "Jesus," Tommy whispers, but he nods. Yeah, I can do that. But we better hurry, because I can feel it getting stronger." As they load Tommy's explosives into Rivera's patrol car, Marcus feels the familiar northward pull intensifying. The sun is already beginning to set, and with each passing minute, the choice to resist becomes harder. Somewhere in the distance, the sound of singing drifts on the evening air, dozens of voices calling their names, promising an end to loneliness and fear. The equinox is only hours away, and Marcus realizes they're racing not just against time, but against their own increasingly fragmented will to save a town that might not want to be saved. The Beaver Dam sprawls across Millbrook Creek like a wall of organic architecture, interwoven branches, mud, and stones creating a barrier nearly 8 feet high and 30 feet wide. Standing before it in the fading daylight, Tommy Reeves sets down his bag of explosives with the reverence of a man who understands the destructive power he's about to unleash. "Beautiful work," he says, studying. "The dam's construction. Took them decades to build this. Shame to destroy it in 30 seconds. Marcus checks his watch, 7:23 p.m. The pull northward has grown so strong that he has to consciously fight the urge to drop everything and walk toward the park. Beside him, Rivera keeps one hand on her weapon, though she's not sure if it's to protect them from external threats or to stop herself if the compulsion becomes overwhelming. "Tommy, how much C4 do we need?" Rivera asks. Tommy examines the dam's structure, his professional focus temporarily overriding the mental fog. 3 charges should do it. 1 at each end to break the main support structure, 1 in the center to blow out the core. He pauses, swaying slightly. "But Marcus, I gotta tell you, I can barely think straight anymore." The sound keeps getting louder. Marcus hears it too, the harmonized singing drifting from the direction of town, growing stronger as more people join the chorus. Through the trees, he can see the glow of streetlights all twisted northward like metallic flowers following an alien sun. "Just focus on the dam," Marcus says. "We blow this, the water redirects through the old stream. and the iron gets carried to whatever's underground. Tommy nods, but his hands shake as he begins placing charges. What if this doesn't work? What if that thing is too strong? Before Marcus can answer, his phone buzzes with a text from Elena, iron loaded. Dr. H says to dump it in the creek, exactly 100 yards downstream from the dam. Water needs time to carry metal through old channel. Are you ready? Marcus types back. Give us 10 minutes, then dump the iron. Get out of there after, don't wait around. As Tommy finishes wiring the explosives, a new sound joins the distant singing footsteps crackling through the underbrush. Multiple sets, moving with purpose. Toward their location. We've got company, Rivera warns, drawing her weapon. Through the trees, figures emerge from the direction of town. Marcus recognizes Mrs. Patterson, the elderly librarian Mrs. Chen, and at least a dozen other residents. They move in perfect synchronization, their faces serene but their eyes empty. Of individual will. Detective Webb, Mrs. Patterson calls in a voice that harmonizes with itself, as if multiple people are speaking through her throat. You're interfering with the homecoming. Tommy fumbles with the detonator, his hands now shaking uncontrollably. Marcus, I can't. They're calling to me. I want to go with them. Tommy, look at me, Marcus commands. Remember your daughter. Remember why you fight every day to stay clean, to be better. This thing wants to take that choice away from you. Tommy's eyes clear slightly. Jenny, my little girl. He grips the detonator tighter. She needs her dad to come home. The advancing residents begin to hum in unison, the sound vibrating through the air with hypnotic power. Marcus feels his resistance crumbling as the melody promises an end to every pain, every lonely moment, every difficult choice he's ever had to make. Now, Tommy, Rivera shouts, before we lose ourselves. Tommy's finger hovers over the detonator button. For a moment that stretches like eternity, the only sounds are the rushing water against the dam and the seductive harmony of the approaching crowd. Then Tommy closes his eyes and pushes the button. The explosion is tremendous, a cascade of thunder that echoes off the surrounding hills. The beaver dam disintegrates in an eruption of wood, mud, and debris. Water immediately begins pouring through the breach, seeking its natural course as it carves a new channel through decades of accumulated sediment. The advancing residents stumble as the shockwave hits them, their perfect synchronization disrupted. Mrs. Patterson clutches her head, confusion replacing the serene emptiness in her eyes. Where am I? She asks, looking around in bewilderment, but the confusion lasts only moments. As the sound of rushing water fades, the singing resumes, and the residents' eyes go vacant again. They continue their approach, but now with more urgency. The water's flowing, Rivera observes, watching the redirected creek carve through the forest floor. But will it reach the underground chamber in time? Marcus's phone buzzes, iron dumped upstream as instructed. Current carrying it toward Park. Dr. H estimates 20 minutes until metal reaches the heart. Hope this works. Elena, 20 minutes. They need to hold their position for 20 minutes while fighting an increasingly irresistible compulsion to join the advancing crowd of townspeople. Tommy drops the detonator, his face slack with sudden peace. Why are we fighting this? He asks. They look so happy. Tommy, no. Marcus grabs his shoulder, but the demolition expert pulls away with surprising strength. I'm tired of being afraid, Tommy says, walking toward Mrs. Patterson and the others. Tired of fighting addiction. Tired of disappointing people. They're offering something better. Marcus starts after him, but Rivera catches his arm. Let him go. We can't save everyone. The hell we can't, Marcus snaps. But even as he says it, he feels the truth of her words. The pull is too strong now. Fighting it requires constant mental effort that's becoming harder to maintain with each passing second. They watch Tommy join the group of townspeople, his face transforming from the weathered expression of a man who's known hardship to the serene mask of someone who's given up the burden of choice. The crowd turns as one and begins walking toward the park, their footsteps creating a rhythm that matches the distant singing. 19 minutes, Rivera says, checking her watch. Think we can hold out? Marcus tests his resolve by trying to imagine leaving Millbrook, driving away from the park and never looking back. The mental exercise creates such intense anxiety that he doubles over, gasping. No, he admits. I don't think we can. Through the trees, they can see the redirected creek flowing with unusual speed toward the park. The water has taken on a dark metallic color from the iron carried in its current. If Dr. Hendrick's calculations are correct, that iron-rich water should reach the underground heart chamber in 15 minutes. But 15 minutes might as well be 15 hours. Marcus can feel his individual will dissolving like sugar in rain, replaced by the overwhelming desire to join the harmony, to become part of something larger and more purposeful than his isolated existence. Rivera, he says, his voice already sounding dreamy and distant. When we get down there, when we join them, try to remember why we came. Try to remember that we chose this. Rivera nods, though her own expression is growing peaceful. Marcus, what if they're right? What if this really is better? They begin walking toward the park, their footsteps falling into the same rhythm as the crowd ahead of them. The singing grows louder with each step, and Marcus feels his fears and doubts melting away like ice in spring. Behind them, iron-rich water continues flowing toward its underground destination, carrying with it the town's last hope for freedom, or its final surrender to something ancient and patient and utterly alien to human understanding. 15 minutes until the metal reaches the heart. 15 minutes until Millbrook discovers whether salvation and damnation are sometimes the same thing. Marcus and Rivera reach the park's entrance as the last rays of sunlight fade behind the western hills. Around them, nearly 100 residents of Millbrook stand in concentric circles around the great oak tree, their voices blending in that haunting harmony that seems to make the air itself vibrate. The tree has changed since morning. The iron containment bands that once encircled its trunk lie in corroded pieces on the ground, and the bark pulses with the same bioluminescent patterns Marcus saw in the underground chamber. But it's the trees. Size that takes his breath away somehow. It has grown at least 10 feet taller since dawn, its branches now reaching toward the darkening sky like the arms of a giant. "Welcome home," says a familiar voice. Sarah emerges from the crowd, but she's transformed even further. Her skin now glows with an inner light that illuminates the gathering dusk, and when she moves, trailing patterns of luminescence follow her like living aurora. She's beautiful in a way that hurts to perceive directly. "You came back," she says to Marcus and Rivera, her voice carrying harmonics that resonate in their bones. "I knew you would understand eventually." Marcus tries to speak, to ask about the iron flowing underground, but finds his voice caught in his throat. The compulsion is overwhelming here at the tree's base, not violent or frightening, but gentle and welcoming as a mother's embrace. "Don't fight it," Sarah says, approaching them with fluid grace. "The choice has already been made." In 8 minutes, the equinox reaches its peak, and everyone within 10 miles will hear the calling. No more loneliness, no more fear, no more painful decisions. She gestures to the crowd around them, and Marcus recognizes faces from throughout the town. Tommy Reeves stands near the tree's base, his expression peaceful for the first time since Marcus has known him. Mrs. Patterson hums softly with her eyes closed, swaying slightly to an internal rhythm. Children who should be home doing homework stand hand in hand with adults who should be worried about mortgages and deadlines. "Look at them," Sarah continues. "When was the last time you saw a community this united, this happy?" Rivera manages to find her voice. "What happens to the people who don't want this, the ones who choose to remain individual?" Sarah's luminous eyes show genuine sadness. there won't be any. The calling becomes irresistible at the peak. Everyone will choose to join us because isolation will become unbearable. It's a mercy, really. Mercy, Marcus repeats, the word feeling strange in his mouth. Standing here among the singing crowd, surrounded by such profound peace and unity, resistance seems not just futile but foolish. Why struggle against something so beautiful? But somewhere in the back of his mind, a small voice whispers, Elena, Dr. Hendricks, the iron in the water. Sarah, he forces himself to ask, what happens if someone finds a way to disrupt the process? To break the connection? Sarah's glow dims slightly, and for a moment she looks almost human again. Why would anyone want to do that? Marcus, I've seen inside the heart. I know what it offers. An end to every pain that has ever kept you awake at night. Every regret, every fear, every moment of crushing loneliness gone forever. She steps closer, her radiance washing over him like warm sunlight. You've spent your entire career trying to save people from violence and suffering. Join us, and you'll save everyone from the violence of being alone inside their own minds. The logic is seductive, undeniable. Marcus feels his remaining resistance crumbling as Sarah reaches out to touch his face. Her skin is warm and electric, and through the contact he glimpses what she's experienced. A vast, connected consciousness where individual suffering dissolves into collective joy. But just as he's about to surrender completely, the ground beneath their feet shudders. A deep rumble rises from underground, different from the harmonious humming of the crowd. This sound is discordant, angry, the shriek of metal being bent beyond its limits. What is that? Rivera asks, momentarily breaking free from the trance. Sarah's expression shifts from serene to concerned. Something's wrong. There's interference. In the deep places, the trees' bioluminescent patterns begin flickering erratically, and several of the gathered townspeople stumble as if losing their connection to the shared consciousness. The harmonious singing wavers, individual voices becoming distinct for the first time in hours. Underground, Marcus realizes the iron-rich water has reached its destination. Elena, he whispers, remembering his promise to protect Sarah's sister. Sarah hears him, and her eyes widen with understanding. No, you didn't. The ground shakes again, more violently this time. Through the park's soil, they can see veins of sickly light pulsing and dying as something ancient writhes in distress. The great oak tree's leaves begin to wither, its supernatural growth reversing as the source of its power is disrupted. You're killing it, Sarah says, her luminous form beginning to flicker like a failing light bulb. You're killing all of us. Around them, the gathered townspeople begin to collapse as their connection to the collective consciousness breaks. Mrs. Patterson falls to her knees, sobbing as individual awareness returns. Tommy Reeves looks around in confusion, his face cycling through emotions as his suppressed personality reasserts itself. Sarah, Marcus reaches for her as her glow continues to fade. Come with us. You can still choose to be human. But Sarah is no longer Sarah, or perhaps she never was after her. Transformation. As the underground heart's power fails, her form begins to dissolve, the borrowed life energy returning to its source. I can't, she whispers, her voice becoming distant and hollow. I'm too connected. When it dies, we all die. She looks at Marcus with eyes that are briefly, heartbreakingly human. Tell Elena I'm sorry. Tell her I chose this because I thought it would end the pain. But pain is what makes us real. The tree gives a massive shudder and begins to split down. Its center, just as it had in 1848 when lightning struck during Father Garrett's time. But instead of lightning, this rupture is caused by the death throes of something far older and more terrible. Sarah's form scatters like luminous mist as the connection finally breaks. Around the park, dozens of people are waking up to find themselves standing in the dark, confused and frightened, but free. the equinox has passed unmarked by celestial powers. The ancient hunger has been, if not destroyed, then at least forced back into dormancy. But in the sudden silence, Marcus realizes they may have won a Pyrrhic victory. The aftermath unfolds like a slow-motion disaster. As the underground heart's death throes finally subside, Marcus and Rivera move through Riverside Park, checking on the dozens of townspeople who are slowly regaining consciousness. Many are injured from their sudden collapse, others are catatonic with shock, but all of them are undeniably completely human again. Tommy Reeves sits on a park bench, his head in his hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "I remember everything," he says when Marcus approaches. "I remember wanting to join them. God help me, I remember how good it felt to stop fighting. Mrs. Patterson has been taken to the ambulance that arrived 20 minutes ago, but she keeps asking for her cat, convinced that she's been away from home for weeks instead of hours. The EMTs are struggling to explain the situation to patients who have no memory of how they ended up in the park. How many are we missing?" Rivera asks, consulting her tablet as emergency vehicles continue to arrive. Marcus counts the faces around them, cross-referencing with the list of known missing persons from the past 6 months. Everyone who disappeared before today is gone. Sarah, the people from 1973, probably dozens of others going back decades. They were too integrated with the system, Dr. Hendricks explains, approaching them with Elena at his side. The professor looks exhausted, but relieved. The iron disrupted the electromagnetic field that was sustaining their transformed state. Without that connection, they died, Elena finishes, her voice hollow. She holds a handful of what looks like luminescent dust, all that remains of her sister. She dissolved right in front of me, just scattered like fireflies. Rivera puts a comforting hand on Elena's shoulder. "She saved everyone, including you. Did she?" Elena asks bitterly. "Look around. Half these people are going to need psychiatric care for months. The other half are going to spend the rest of their lives wondering if they made the right choice, resisting something that promised to end their pain forever." She's not wrong. As Marcus surveys the park, he sees the cost of their victory written in the faces of the rescued townspeople. Mrs. Chun, the librarian, stares at the withered oak tree with tears streaming down her face. "It was so beautiful," she keeps saying. "Why did we make it stop?" Tommy approaches Marcus, his eyes red but clear. "Detective, I need to know, did we do the right thing? Because I gotta tell you, for those few hours, I felt complete. Like every addiction, every craving, every reason I've ever disappointed my daughter just didn't exist anymore." Marcus doesn't have a good answer. How do you explain to someone that slavery can feel like freedom when the chains are made of silk and golden promises? "Tommy, you still get to choose who you want to be tomorrow," he says finally. "That's worth something, is it?" Tommy asks. "Because right now, choice feels like a burden I'm not sure I want to carry." Dr. Hendricks approaches with his field equipment, electromagnetic sensors that no longer register any unusual activity. "The immediate threat is over," he reports. "But Marcus, we need to talk about what happens next." They move away from the crowd to discuss the situation privately. The tree is clearly dying, its supernatural growth already reversing as the branches wither and contract. But Dr. Hendricks looks troubled rather than relieved. "The iron disrupted this particular manifestation," he explains. "But the entity itself, the thing that's been feeding on human consciousness for centuries, I don't think we killed it. We just forced it into dormancy. How long do we have?" Rivera asks, "Based on the historical pattern?" 50 years, maybe less. It will spend that time recovering, growing stronger, learning from what we did tonight." Dr. Hendricks pockets his sensors. "Your children's children might face something far more sophisticated and subtle than what we encountered." Elena looks up from the dust in her palms. Sarah left something behind. "Besides this," She pulls out a small metal object, a compass, that spins wildly before pointing steadily north, not toward magnetic north, but toward something else entirely. It's still active, Marcus realizes, pointing toward another source. Dr. Hendricks examines the compass, his expression growing. Grim. This tree wasn't the only one. Sarah's research suggested a network of anchor points across the continent, maybe across the world. We won this battle, but the war ... The war continues, Rivera finishes. As dawn approaches, the cleanup crews arrive to deal with the withered tree and the mysteriously carved symbols that are only now becoming visible in its dying bark. The official story will mention a gas leak that caused mass hallucinations, mundane enough to satisfy most questions, but those who lived through it will know better. Marcus finds himself standing at the edge of the park as the sun rises, watching Tommy Reeves reunite with his daughter. The little girl runs to her father with pure joy, unaware that he spent hours last night questioning whether individual existence was worth the struggle. Second thoughts? Rivera asks, joining him. Constantly, Marcus admits. Elena's right. Some of these people are going to spend the rest of their lives wondering if we made the wrong choice for them. But we did make it, Rivera points out. That's the important thing. We preserved their right to choose, even if the choice is painful. Elena approaches them, having scattered the last of Sarah's remains beneath the dying tree. Dr. Hendricks is organizing an expedition to investigate the other anchor points. He wants to know if you'll help. Marcus looks at the compass in Elena's hand, still pointing north toward some distant source of ancient hunger. Somewhere out there, another community might be facing the same choice Millbrook faced last night. Other families might be losing loved ones to promises of eternal unity and freedom from pain. What about you? He asks Elena. Are you going with him? Someone needs to continue Sarah's research, she says simply. Someone needs to understand what really fighting. Rivera checks her watch. I should get back to the station. We've got about 50 witness statements to take, and I need to figure out how to file reports that won't get us all committed. As she walks away, Marcus realizes that their victory has committed them to something larger than they initially understood. They've not saved Millbrook so much as they've enlisted in a war that spans centuries and continents. The compass needle swings slightly, as if something far away has stirred in its sleep. Elena, Marcus says, making his decision. When do we leave? 3 months later, Marcus stands in the ruins of an abandoned church in northern Quebec, watching. Elena documents symbols carved into stone walls that mirror exactly what they found beneath Millbrook's oak tree. The compass Sarah left behind spins lazily in Elena's palm, before settling on a direction that leads deeper into the Canadian wilderness. 17 sites so far, Dr. Hendricks says, consulting his field notes. All following the same pattern: natural electromagnetic anomalies, missing persons reports spanning decades, and tree roots that extend far deeper than they should. Their expedition has grown since leaving Millbrook. Rivera joined them after taking extended leave from the police department, unable to return to normal detective work after witnessing something that challenged every assumption about reality. Tommy Reeves surprised everyone by volunteering his demolition expertise, claiming that staying busy kept him from thinking too much about what he'd briefly experienced in the park. The good news, Rivera reports, returning from her survey of the surrounding forest, is that this site appears dormant. Whatever was here went quiet sometime in the 1940s. Probably when the last residential school closed, Elena observes. Reading from a historical survey, hundreds of indigenous children disappeared from this area over several decades. The official records blame disease and runaways, but the pattern is too familiar. Marcus examines the carved symbols, noting how they seem to shift in his peripheral vision, always trying to draw his gaze toward the center of the spiral pattern. Even dormant, These sites retain a subtle influence that requires constant vigilance to resist. Dr. Hendricks, he says, how many of these anchor points do you estimate exist worldwide? The professor adjusts his thick glasses, considering the question. Based on our research and Sarah's calculations, potentially hundreds, most likely concentrated around areas with high population density and natural electromagnetic activity. Tommy's radio crackles from where he's been setting up camp. Hey folks, you need to hear this news report. They gather around his portable radio as a CBC announcer delivers the evening news. The small town of Whitehorse, Yukon, is experiencing what local authorities are calling a mass sleepwalking event. Over 200 residents were found, gathered in the town's central park early this morning, with no memory of how they arrived there. While no injuries have been reported, the incident has prompted calls for a federal investigation into possible environmental causes. Double quotes. Elena checks her compass. The needle swings to point northwest directly toward Yukon territory. It's awakening. Others, Dr. Hendricks realizes grimly. Our disruption of the Millbrook site may have sent out some kind of signal, activating dormant nodes in the network. Marcus feels a familiar chill as he recognizes the implications. We didn't solve the problem. We just made it spread faster. Maybe, Elena says, studying her sister's journal. But we also proved that these things can be stopped. The iron disruption technique works. We have Sarah's research, we understand the pattern, and now we know they're vulnerable. Rivera pulls up a map on her tablet, marking the locations they've investigated and cross-referencing with recent reports of unusual activity. If this is a network, then there has to be a central hub, something coordinating the individual sites. Sarah theorized about that, Elena says, flipping to a page near the end of the journal. She called it the first tree, a primary anchor point that all the others connect to. She thought it might be located somewhere in the Arctic based on magnetic field readings and Aboriginal oral histories about the hungry spirit that sleeps beneath the ice. Tommy examines their equipment inventory. If we're talking about something under Arctic ice, we're going to need different gear. Cold weather explosives, ice-penetrating equipment, maybe even icebreakers. And more people, Rivera adds. If this thing is as large as you're suggesting, we'll need a full expedition. Scientists, military support, maybe even international cooperation. Marcus stares at the compass, watching its needle point steadily northwest toward what might be humanity's greatest threat or its next evolutionary step, depending on perspective. The weight of responsibility feels overwhelming, but the alternative is worse. Elena, he says, your sister wrote about the painful beauty of individual choice. About how pain is what makes us real. Elena nods, understanding. She also wrote that some choices are too important to make alone. Over the next hour, they place calls to contacts around the world, scientists, government officials, indigenous community leaders who've preserved stories about ancient threats. The response is mixed, skepticism from academics, cautious interest from military officials, and knowing nods from elders who've always known that some things sleep beneath the earth, waiting for the right moment to wake. By midnight, they have commitments for an international research expedition, funding from 3 governments, and access to specialized Arctic equipment. The network Elena mapped from Sarah's research shows anchor points on every continent, but all compass readings point toward the same remote region of northern Canada. So we're really doing this, Rivera says as they prepare to break camp. We're going to hunt down something that's been influencing human civilization for millennia. We're going to give people a choice, Marcus corrects. The same choice we preserved in Millbrook. As they pack their equipment, Tommy's radio picks up another news report. Similar incidents now reported in Anchorage, Alaska, and Yellowknife, Northwest Territories. Authorities are investigating possible connections between the mass behavioral events. Elena closes Sarah's journal and slips it into her backpack alongside the compass that continues to point north. Sarah wrote that the entity feeds on consciousness, but it also preserves it. Everyone we lost in Millbrook, they might still exist. Somewhere in the network, if we can find the central hub. We might be able to bring them back, Marcus finishes, though he's not sure he believes it. They load their vehicles as the northern lights begin to dance across the Quebec sky. Green and gold auroras that seem to pulse in rhythm with the compass. Needle's subtle vibrations. Dr. Hendricks points out that the aurora activity has been unusually intense since the Millbrook incident, as if the Earth's magnetic field is responding to changes in the network. One more thing, Tommy says as they prepare to drive toward their rendezvous with the international expedition. What happens if we're wrong? What if this thing really is offering something better than what we have? Marcus considers the question as he starts his engine. Then we make sure everyone gets to choose for themselves, instead of having the choice made for them by something that's been manipulating human consciousness for centuries. As their convoy pulls away from the abandoned church, Marcus glances in his rearview mirror at the ruins disappearing into darkness. Behind them lie 17 documented sites of ancient influence, each one temporarily dormant, but still connected to something vast and patient and utterly inhuman. Ahead lies the Arctic, and whatever waits beneath the ice. In his pocket, Elena's compass points steadily north, its needle trembling with anticipation as they drive toward the heart of a mystery that spans continents and centuries. The network is awakening, but for the first time since Sarah Chun disappeared on an October evening in Millbrook, they have a plan to fight back. The war for human consciousness has begun, and Marcus Webb has chosen his side, not because the choice is easy, but because the right to choose is what makes them human. Behind them, aurora light dances across the abandoned church where symbols still spiral inward toward infinite depth, waiting for the next traveler who might stop to look too closely and discover that some invitations are impossible to refuse. The compass needle trembles and points north. Always north.